Good morning and happy Memorial Day. Today is May the 29th. That's Memorial Day, everybody. So I hope you're enjoying your burgers and your salads.
Remembering
Yep.
those who have fallen.
Yes. No. I was getting to that. But yeah, remembering those who have fallen. Wait, what's your favorite holiday, Pastor Eugene?
Father's Day.
This Father's Day is going to be rocking. I'm going to get so many things. I just know it. It's going to be great. But I hope you are enjoying your rest on Memorial Day. Today, we have a couple of fun questions lined up for you, and we'll be just having a fun time, a good old time, as they say, today on the Dear Church podcast. So sit back, relax, and drink your Fresca.
Finestians.
What is that?
Fun
Venetians?
questions.
Oh.
Celsius.
What's your favorite? Oh, we're also powered by Celsius again this week, by the way. Hope they sponsor us one day. But what's your favorite soda that you're sipping on today, Pastor Eugene? What are you sipping on? What are you sipping on?
Celsius sparkling orange. And it promises the acceleration of metabolism
Yeah.
with a few asterisks.
Yeah.
With a few superscripts, yeah.
I have the wild berry myself, and it burns body fat.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of symbols after that, so I don't know how reliable this is. There's a little asterisk. Anyway. This morning, we're going to have a lot of fun. You are listening to the Dear Church podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
I am Eugene Kim.
Oh my goodness.
What? What is that?
Yeah, why
You've
is that
never-
shocking?
You have not said that since episode 2. We're on 100 something.
It's Funtivities.
It is Funtivities. What's your name, man?
Rocket Raccoon.
So Junsuk recently watched, what's that movie?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah.
Volume 3, and you loved it.
Yeah, it's better than 1 and 2.
So you're a Marvel head.
No.
Actually, I saw Quantumania.
The Ant-Man one.
Yeah. It was the worst.
It was rough.
It was the worst waste of my life in the last, I think, year.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
The biggest waste.
Let me ask you this
the
question.
worst waste.
Sam was dying to find out what happened to Scott.
Yeah, because I stopped halfway. But let me ask you this fun question.
Scott Lang.
Yeah.
What is the worst movie? Number 1, Eternals. Number 2, Thor: Love and Thunder. Number 3, Quantumania Ant-Man.
Oh, you put that up there. You didn't even finish Quantumania.
No,
I
we
did,
finished
I
it.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
I
Okay.
mean, but I shouldn't have. It was...
No, I think Thor: Love and Thunder was worse than the Eternals.
Thor: Love and Thunder is perhaps the worst movie I've watched in my entire life.
I
It's-
didn't watch it.
Oh, I think you should. It's so good. It's wait, what's the worst movie you've ever watched, Pastor Eugene?
I think all the recent ones are probably the worst.
But like the worst, the pinnacle of the worst.
I don't know.
Thor: Love and Thunder for me.
I didn't
100%.
watch that. See,
But Eternals was pretty rough.
I didn't watch that either.
The Star Wars, the new ones.
Oh yeah, that was so terrible. So terrible.
But was it bad from a movie standpoint, or was it bad because you're a fan of Star Wars?
yeah, both.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it
I
was
didn't
like
see it,
doubly
so.
bad.
gotcha.
It was the worst.
So I mean, that was question number 1. That wasn't even on the sheet, on the one sheet that we have. But here we go with the fun questions, and then this is just kind of to be in a light mood. You know what I'm saying? As we drink our Celsius on this Monday morning. What are you reading these days? What books are you reading these days?
Books. I decided to get back into reading the Lord of the Rings.
Oh wow, LOTR.
Yeah. So I just started over, just, light reading. And then recently you and I both finished Robbie Castleman's book, Parenting from the Pews.
That's a good one. Parenting from the Pews.
Sam thought Robbie was a man the entire time.
For the entire time.
No.
You could
Before
tell
I
from
read
the
the book.
intro.
No, before I read the book.
The intro, you could tell.
No, because
this is a woman.
on the back flap it says my view of church is like this, like, hey daddy, meet my kids. And I was like, that's a weird way for a man to call God.
It's a weird way for anybody to.
I
call
know,
God.
but yeah. So it is a woman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
Robbie.
preparing for the summer, so we're reading those books. I am excited for some new books that I ordered, but I won't say until I've read them.
Mm.
Yeah, and then I've been reading some Antonin Scalia books and some of his speeches.
Wow. She's like, what about you? What are some books that you're reading right now?
My yearly dose of R.C. Sproul. So I've been reading Defending Your Faith. It's a short book on the topic of apologetics, how we can think reasonably as we defend our faith.
Great. I'm currently reading, and this is for people that love church history. I'm not really one of them, but I think a lot of people are interested in church history. There's a new series by Nick Needham called 2000 Years of Christ's Power, and it's in different volumes. And the first volume is the age of the early church fathers. So right after Jesus ascends and the apostles, they die, like what happened to the church? And so it's really well written, and it's very interesting, and it goes through historical documents. And it's crazy because there's so many historical records of what the apostles did, how they died, even throughout like the early centuries after Christ's ascension. And so it's really interesting, like that people can ever say that this didn't happen. But it's really cool. That's one of my reads right now. Okay, great. What are you watching these days?
This is fun questions.
Yeah, these are fun. These are fun. These are fun.
I like how you said it 3 times.
Yeah, just to convince myself. Are there any shows that you're watching or movies that you're watching? This is just so that the people can get to know you, the peoples.
Well, I mean, I think I said it here before. My wife and I watch an episode of Blue Bloods every time we have a chance to sit down. Recently, we haven't though. So no Blue Bloods. Yeah, every TV show that we've watched always has some kind of LGBTQ thing in there.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. So we watched Blue Bloods thinking that it was a more conservative show. And it's about a Roman Catholic conservative family. They always eat Sunday night dinners together. But there are insertions of LGBTQ. And like Tom Selleck's character says it outright in one of the episodes. This is something where he disagrees with the church. The church is not, up to speed on this or something to that effect. Yeah, so that was unfortunate. But it is about, you break the law and then you use law enforcement to capture the bad guy, bring them to justice, and things like that. So it is kind of conservative in that where, in our society today, we've lost a lot of it. Like what bad guys, they should be released because it's the system that's at fault, right? Not the individual. The individual can't be at fault if the system's at fault. So we shouldn't put anybody in jail. And then we continue to see like these criminals get released and do even more harm, do greater danger. Who was that guy in Waukesha? That guy who ran over like a ton of people, including children, with his SUV.
Oh,
And
is that?
yeah, there was, and then we realized now if you look at his history, he had a rap sheet, a ton of stuff. We recently talked about Jordan Neely.
Yeah.
And then he had like 40 plus arrests. And they just wouldn't charge him, put him in jail when he really needed that help, and he really needed to get separated from society. And that's something that is quite unfortunate that we don't see in society. So, shows like that were encouraging. And I'm not sure. I always ask people, like, what's a good show that I could watch? Because my wife and I are always looking for something, light. Maybe once or twice a week we could sit down and watch a show. But, there really is nothing out there these days. I don't know. I think the latest show / movie that I saw was a Korean one. It was on Amazon. It was called
The movie with Don Lee.
Yeah. It was called like
It's like the
Bad Guys,
the thief, the robber, the whatever.
The cop, the gangster, and
the
the
devil.
devil.
Yeah,
Something
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I watched that. I think Korean movies are really, really, really like great these days. They're so good.
Could I give you a recommendation?
Sure.
Chimp Empire. Great documentary on chimps. I'm not even kidding. I recently stumbled across it because I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. And okay, granted, these people think that, we are human beings or we're some type of, primate chimp type of thing that evolved, which is not true. But it's really interesting just kind of seeing these chimpanzees and seeing how God made them and just kind of seeing just like how intellectual they are and how they communicate. I mean, it really ultimately brings glory to God, but it's very, very interesting. It's nice.
Okay.
Chimp Empire. But anywho.
Junsuki, any recommendations?
I still watch a lot of Scrubs. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a very old TV show. And I watch a bunch of YouTube videos on guitars.
Wow.
Exciting.
Do you think people are excited at this point?
No.
Like I want to listen to
we
more.
lost like half of them.
No. But we'll gain them right back. So don't turn that dial. We actually put out an Instagram question blurb thing saying that we're going to be recording a fun questions podcast. And so we got a bunch of different questions that I wanted to ask. Can you talk about working out and the Christian? When does working out become too much? And I think it's a little broader than that too. It's when does this pursuit of health become too much? Even with like eating habits, because some people, and we talked about this in the office before too, actually 2 days ago, but this pursuit of the fountain of youth, is that wrong? Because in the Bible, it does seem like gray hairs, age is a good thing. There's wisdom that comes from it, experience that comes from it. Dying in your old age is a great thing in the Bible. It's a blessing. But today it seems like everyone just wants to be younger, with surgeries, with working out too much, with eating a certain way too much, caring too much. So when does that become, I guess, wrong, or is it ever wrong?
Well, I mean, let's get down to some of the concerns that people have, which I think are legitimate.
Mm.
And I think some people have brought up, especially the health, let's say, influencers on the social media.
Yeah.
Like outlets. Our foods have become unhealthy.
Mm.
So, we think, McDonald's in the 50s is the same as McDonald's in the 2020s. And I don't think that's true. And I think people will also agree that's probably not true. And there is a degrading of quality in our, especially fast foods, right? And so when we think about that and people are really looking to get the highest quality of, nutrients and food sources, I think that's a not bad idea. I get it that we shouldn't stuff our face with like chips all the time. And so I think that's a given, right? So don't stuff your face with chips all the time or snacks or whatnot. And you should, if you're going to put something in your body, it should be relatively healthy and good for you. I think that's a decent goal to have. There are extremes though, obviously. With everything, there's an extreme. So instead of talking only about the extremes, how about we think about the vast majority of people eat bad food?
Yeah.
And then if there are some people that are going to bring this to light and say, here are some healthier options that are affordable, that is relatively easy to make, that is convenient, right? I think right now on like social media, cottage cheese is the new trend. So everything is made with cottage cheese. And before that, it was Greek yogurt. Everything was made with Greek yogurt. And so you could have a good amount of protein as well as healthy carbs and fats.
Yeah.
And so those are, I think I enjoy those. I share them with you, Sam, whenever I come up to like a nice little, I don't know,
recipe video.
Yeah. I like those. And I actually use some of them. I think there was this one guy who sounds like you, right?
He does not sound like me in the slightest.
And he like rhymes. I don't know what his name is, but he like rhymes everything.
Yeah.
And then he watches another recipe video and then he mimics it. And then he gives you his like response.
Yeah.
He sounds, a lot of people say he sounds like you.
Is that the guy that's looking out the window?
No.
Oh.
I don't know what guy you're talking about.
Yeah. But I got some recipes from him.
So I guess my question is, I mean, obviously it's good to eat healthy. Obviously it's good to take care of your body. We know that our bodies are something that we are to steward, right? Even our bodies. And so, but then I'm wondering, when does that ever become too much? Because, and the reason why I asked this is because, I was listening to Al Mohler this morning. I'm sorry, not Al Mohler. I was listening to Daily Wire on the way here. And they did a little bit about Instagram and how since social media has come on the scene, girls are above 50% more likely to harm themselves because of the images that they see online, right? And so I think with everything that's going on in social media, the good it brings, there's obviously negatives to it. And that's one of the things, like self-image is one of those things. And especially with summer coming, everyone's trying to get ripped. Everyone's trying to get shreddy, mixed shreddy. Is there is there a wrong in that? Is there something wrong that we should be watching out for as we also consume social media as well?
Oh yeah, I hate social media for young women in our society. That's no secret. And getting shreddy McShreddy is if it's about vanity, obviously that's a sin. And that's pride. We talked about pride before in one of our earlier episodes. But if it's about you and looking good, that definitely is a sin. And I think people are very susceptible to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even before social media was as big as it is now and it was just coming on the scene, people already knew. Like when we were taking photographs, people already knew what their good side was. It's like, because never ever before have we seen so much of ourselves. There's the invention of not just the camera, but even before that, our mirrors have gotten really good. If you look in the olden days, who had mirrors? It was just like maybe one steel sheet, and then you could kind of see yourself ish. But no one really knew what they looked like, unless they looked in water. What's that Greek mythology? Where, the
Mulan.
guy...
Oedipus? No, not Oedipus.
No.
Mulan does it too.
Narcissus.
Yeah, that's where that's where narcissism came from.
Yeah.
And so, it's about looking at the self. It's about loving the self, and then you just become infatuated with the self, and you just want to show the world, that fake image of yourself. And then so now it's taken many shades where people even are like, oh, here's reality versus
Instagram.
But that's still fake. You know what I mean? They're just trying to say, oh, look at my real self. But that's still not the real self. That's still a pseudo facade of who you are. You can't capture the real self in a video or a reel or even a photograph. And so I think, you display the real self within community and spending life together. And that's something that we have done less and less of over the years, especially with COVID. And that's very unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the health of society. And that's why, social media taking a predominant chunk of your, day, influencing you, just in an unhealthy way. That's why there's so much mental health crises arising.
Yeah.
I just think it's a spiritual war and battle that we're losing, and we're losing our young people to it.
Yeah. I mean, now that I have a daughter as well, I've been even thinking about in the next 10 years how I'm going to parent my child in a way where they can appropriately look at social media and consume it properly. But maybe as we're on this topic, and I know we've kind of discussed this a little bit before, but what would be an appropriate way as a Christian to consume social media? I mean, it seems like social media is kind of one of those things where even if you don't mean to, you're consuming it every second you're scrolling, right? And so one of the dangers I remember of a lot of these sports pages, like ESPN even, is that a lot of these, pages have inappropriate sexual content now, no matter where you turn. And so without even realizing it, without even trying to, you're consuming this material, this content that's inappropriate. And so I guess what would be the proper way of doing it? How do you safeguard? How do you kind of practice doing this as a Christian?
Well, I think social media is a relatively new technology, and we don't know how to use it well or, to the best of its, potential, because it is pretty new. And when you write algorithms maybe not perfectly either. There should be a purpose to social media, and that purpose hasn't been solidified. It's not been established. I think the purpose right now is entertainment. So people go on social media to be entertained.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that entertainment is now the primary motivator for anybody to open up their social media accounts. It's not like you really want to get informed about monkeys or whatever you guys watch, right?
Mm.
It's about like, oh, let me watch this cool vid or this fun vid or this jokey vid. And, we share it with others and we have a laugh together. And so it's primarily entertainment. If that's the case and you spend, let's say, 8 hours on social media, you're spending 8 hours on entertainment. And, every, maybe out of the 8 hours or something, you spend 1% of that because, it just so happens some kind of informational video comes up and you're like, oh, I feel wise now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that's a huge waste of our resources, brain power, potential growth and maturity. It's all gone out the door. And, I think one of the great things about when we talked about the Eternal Father's Day, we talked about the Sabbath and what we're looking forward to.
Right.
Is I think you would turn off social media. It's weird. So we have a range of people that attend our church. And I'm sure that the people that attend our church that we're going to talk about probably don't listen to this podcast. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they do. But during service, they would watch reels on social media.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to do with themselves because that's what they're used to doing.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are, let's say, a little more mature get really upset. Like, an elder or deacon or one of the staff members would look at that. They get really upset. But this is what people have been doing for all their lives. This is what they've grown up in. They've grown up in this milieu of you do something while you scroll social media. Like, you know what I mean? So let's watch a movie. You watch a movie and you scroll through social media. You watch Netflix and you watch your reels. You do papers and you do social media. Does that make sense? And so when people go to church, they also can't get their minds focused and they'll have to look at social media.
I don't think we get bored anymore. I don't think that's a thing anymore. People don't get bored anymore.
Yeah, I forgot who said it. They said boredom is healthy. Boredom is boredom builds character.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time we have a little lull, we can immediately go to our phones, which is literally attached to our hand.
Right.
I've seen a lot of young people, they don't even put their phones in their pockets. They just walk with their phones in their hand.
Yeah.
A lot of young people don't sleep with their phones on the bedside. They sleep with their phones next to their pillow. They put it on top of their pillow.
Yeah.
So that when they get a notification, their phone will light up and they'll wake up to look at what that notification is because they don't want to miss anything. What if something crazy happens, and you get this group text? You need to be on it. Yeah,
you got to respond.
Like a losing basketball team all of a sudden starts winning and you get a notification.
But
is that not relevant?
No.
Okay.
No. But honestly, by the time this comes out, hopefully they won Game 6 and they're going to Game 7. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the hysteria?
So for those that are wondering what Sam is talking about, he's talking about the Bucks.
No. Talking about the Celtics and the Heat. If they went just absolute pandemonium. My goodness.
If they win, Sam has promised coffee for like the rest of the summer. For the staff.
Champion if they win the championship.
Why is it just me? How about everybody else?
You're the Celtics fan.
So are you. You also own a t-shirt too.
All right. So Junseok and Sam.
Yeah.
Anyway, I forget where we went.
Talking about social media, keeping the phone on the pillow.
Yeah, I think that is a little much. Just like you can always go to the extreme of working out. If it's about the self, of course it's too much. If it's about health and you want to live long so that you could provide for your family as long as you can, and it's about the others, it's about glorifying God with what He has given you, making the most of what you have, that's great. But then when we turn it to the self, it becomes vanity, it becomes pride. In the same way, when you work out and you can't work out without a camera on you.
Oh, yeah.
That's vanity. That's pride. And so now we've put together the working out and the social media because a lot of that stuff is just tied together. There's so many like workout vids of people putting it on their social media because they have a following. They're like, oh, look at this. And some people say they record themselves for perfect form. They want to see if they have good form or not. And so that's why they record themselves, which I think is a very, very weak and just, fragile argument. I don't think so. I think you can record yourself once or twice, but not every time. And you can't post it on Instagram every day. And, that kind of thing. And now influencer is an actual position. And so the government has utilized this as a resource for themselves to push their own agendas. And so we know that the White House has hired a bunch of social media influencers
to promote the candidate.
To promote their agenda, actually, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so they'll have a lot of young people come out on social media and say, the other party's the devil, that kind of thing, to promote their agenda. And so they are being used because what else is there to do on this? So I think while it's a novel technology, we can kind of see that it's not being used in the best way possible. I do have a lot, I guess we all have a lot of thoughts on social media because we're so involved with it. But I think one of the biggest dangers, again, is vanity. You don't want to do that. You don't want to just be bored because you need to be entertained. That's also a vain prospect for you to continue to go after. And so it's okay to be bored. It's okay to sit in your thoughts. It's okay to just focus on one thing. It's okay to just open the Bible and turn off your phone entirely. And, just focus on the word, have a silent time of meditation and prayer. That's okay to do. It's not a bad thing to do. But here we are. As soon as we wake up, the first thing that we grab is our phones. And the last thing that we let go of at night is our phones. And so, for the most part, it seems as though it has literally been attached to us, and not in a good way.
Let me ask a question that's maybe a half a step deeper, just a half a step. It almost makes it seem like then taking care of ourselves, and it doesn't even have to be working out. It could be buying clothes. It could be buying, stuff to wear, and I don't know, buying things, right? It almost makes it seem like we are never as Christians, never to do something for looking good, to look better, because ultimately that is just vanity, right? And so then, is there no room for the Christian to want to look good, to want to look better, to want to buy new shiny clothes, new shoes, work out to look better? Like, is there no room for that for the Christian? Because ultimately that is vanity. Or is it more of like, we want to prioritize, first of all, the inner character, godliness, and then you could, with whatever left remainder money or time or focus you have, then I guess you could focus on these smaller vain things like, fancy clothes, shoes, jewelry, whatever have you.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're deep in this kind of sin and not realize it. But at the same time, you don't want to be someone that just only looks, is this vain? Is this not vain? Is this vain or is this not vain? Like anything that you do should be for the glory of God. It should be for the edification of others. You don't want to look like a bum.
No.
Like, there's the parable where the guy literally didn't dress up for the wedding and then he was kicked out.
Yeah.
Because the way we dress in that sense honors the person, the host.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to, let's say, to have dinner with the president or the king,
Mm-hmm.
would you dress in basketball shorts and, a wife beater?
Probably not.
Probably
Definitely not.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Probably not.
Yeah.
You dress to honor the host as a guest. And so even on Sundays, why do you dress? To bring attention to yourself or to honor,
Right.
the host? You have, and so when you dress in a certain way, and we talked about a little bit about you mentioning athleisure, even athleisure is still focused on the self. And so when you dress and you dress in a modest way or you dress in a fanciful way, isn't it to honor the host?
Mm-hmm.
It's to honor the other person. It's to honor, let's say, if you're a woman, your husband, and your husband dresses decently to honor his household and things like that. And to, all those things come into play, and it can be kind of more complex than what we're saying right now. But I think we have simplified it to what honors me, what brings me glory, what makes me comfortable, what makes me entertained.
Yeah.
That's why we dress
Right.
the way we dress.
Right.
And I think that's wrong. And I think that is a selfish way of looking at life. And people are like, oh, you always have to look to the other. No, I think it comes naturally when you understand the gospel. When you understand what has been done for you, by whom, you living in a manner that is glorifying to God brings you joy. It brings you just this understanding that you have a great privilege of the ability to do this. And so, I think there's even there's debate around how people dress in the workplace. And so I forget what it was exactly. Just like if you remember, you could tell me, but it was about uniforms, and it was about some ranger uniform or something like that, or park ranger uniform. Like men had to wear men's uniforms and women had to wear women's uniforms, and men couldn't wear women's uniform because that is not quote unquote proper attire, and people got upset. Like, why can't women? Well, the same thing. Why can't you wear, basketball shorts while you're a park ranger? You can't.
Yeah.
Because there's a uniform that is appropriate to the office that you hold. And so, especially when you're exercising the office duties, and there's a uniform that you hold. And so you wouldn't go to, let's say, even if it's like a non-Sunday service, like a Good Friday service or something, you wouldn't go in sweatpants. That would be unheard of.
Unless the individual didn't really know what was happening. Do you know what I mean? Unless the individual wasn't really sure what the culture was at the time. And then he learned and never did that again.
Are
then
you
I think
defending someone that will wear sweatpants to a church service?
No, I think in the past, if they did it and they grew from it, I think that's growth.
Yeah. I remember I told this particular person to take off the sweats and to wear jeans, and someone else came in with jeans, and so he had to switch pants.
What do you mean you? What do you mean you? You mean this person?
Yeah, he had to switch pants.
Yeah.
So this person
With
made
this other
someone
person.
else underdress because
Yeah.
of his folly.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
I think it's just,
and I think I gave him
brotherhood.
also a jacket to put on. So he had a jacket that was mine and jeans that was someone else's.
the jeans were way too big. They were way too big.
I feel like you're familiar with this scenario.
Because I was there. I witnessed the whole thing firsthand.
I think he had like a quarter zip that he left in the office that he just put on.
It was just a rough time, but I think this question also connects. It's interesting how all these questions are actually connecting as we conversate, if you will. But you talked about doing everything for the glory of God and how everything flows from that. With that in mind, then, can Christians ever have luxury? And if so, to what extent?
Yeah. I think I contrasted glory of God versus glorying the self,
Right.
because glorying the self is directly going against glorifying God. It's God who glorifies us. because of his incredible grace. He's the one that lifts us up. We don't deserve it. But when we lift ourselves up, we're saying that we deserve to be lifted up. And that is a very, very prideful statement. And so even when we take that concept and bring it to luxury, I think that's the concept that we have to have. There were rich people in the Bible.
Yeah.
Tons of rich people. Like Job, insanely rich.
Very. Abraham was really rich too.
Yeah. Both of them were considered technically like almost kings of their time.
Yeah.
They're patriarchs.
Yeah.
Right? And people looked up to them. They amassed like tons of wealth. And so that's not a bad thing. If you have the ability to amass wealth, that's awesome. That means you have the know-how, you have the skill, you have the opportunity that's been given to you. And so one of the things that we see is kind of pushing up against that is, so even with Job and with Abraham, is the moral issue of goods. And so I think that's something that we could look at in a deeper way, maybe in another podcast, but really simply put, if you have wealth, but you don't have morals, meaning you are bereft or bankrupt of the concept of good, and you do what is evil, God considers that evil. When you have wealth and you've amassed yourself wealth, but you use it for the glory of God, God considers that good.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really about the person then. If this person is of good moral character, if he's in right standing with God, and ultimately it boils down to, is this person a person of faith? If this person is a person of faith, then he will use what he has been given for the glory of God. And God continually, sanctifies this person, corrects this person, or disciplines this person because he loves this person to whatever extent so that he continues to grow in this way. And when you don't, you will continue to use wealth to prop yourself up, to make sure you have that standing without anybody threatening you. So you will step on other people.
Yeah.
You will go to lengths where you would even murder other people so that you can keep your position.
Yeah.
And that is something that God does not condone. In fact, he hates and abhors that. And so we see that luxury needs to not be separated from moral, the morality or the faith of the person. And so the person that holds this luxury is important to know. And so if you are someone without luxury and you desire luxury, I consider that weird, because why do you want luxury for luxury's sake? If you just so happen, as you continue to work hard, these things that necessitate luxury come upon you, necessitate, that you have this luxury come upon you, then that's great. Isn't it awesome? So I'll give you an example. Let's say you start off with an acre of land.
Yeah.
And you harvest the land, you grow the land, you learn about the land, and that acre turns into 13 acres. You're not going to hand harvest all of that. You're not going to go around with a sickle and doing all that stuff.
Right.
And then luxury comes upon you. You get a nice tractor that is able to handle 13 acres and then 63 acres and hundreds of acres of land. And people might consider that luxury because you have now technological advances that are helping you. That's great, in my opinion. I don't consider that evil. But let's say, you need to keep with the Joneses and the farm next to you, and you have like 13, tractors when you only have an acre of land. That would seem ridiculous to you, wouldn't it? Why do you have 13 tractors for an acre of land? You don't need that, but you do it because the guy next to you with 63 acres has 13 tractors or whatever it is. And so while that might sound ridiculous, that's exactly what we do now with the amount of clothing we have, the constant upgrades in our tech that we need. Like every year we need it.
Yeah.
And I really like going back to the clothing part. Why do we have so much clothes? It's insane.
Yeah.
Even 30, 40 years ago, people didn't have the amount of outfits that the average person has now.
Mm-hmm.
People used to have a closet full of clothes. Now we have a closet full of the season that we're in.
Yeah.
So our walk-in closet has summer clothes during the summer, and then we clear out that closet, and then our walk-in closet, I'm talking about the average nominal person, which is kind of weird to me to even say. And so why do you have that? That's an excess. Well, we can't wear the same clothes. I'm like, why not? It's weird.
I heard it's actually like a thing where ladies going to weddings don't like wearing the same dress more than once. So they have to buy a new dress every wedding that they. This is like a normal like,
You would never wear the same dress
yeah.
for a wedding that you attend.
What if it's a different crowd?
So let's say if there's 5 weddings, you would have 5 different dresses. Let's say 5 weddings in the span of a summer season, right?
Yeah.
You would have 5 different dresses, or, and people are like, oh, you men have it easy. All you have to do is wear a tux and you look good. Women don't have it easy. And, we're supposed to feel sympathy. I think there are ways around it. And people, even in this culture, have brainstormed. How do I not look too terrible? And yet, how do I not waste money? And so even within our church, our ladies, what they've done, some of our ladies, not all of them, they've swapped dresses.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that.
so some ladies actually share dresses with each other, because I can wear it once for some wedding a few years ago, but you can wear this dress and no one would even notice it was on you, right?
Right.
And so some people have done things, people have gotten creative. I just find it fascinating and also at the same time appalling of where our fashion has gone and how we have to wear a different thing like every day for the rest of our lives. That's like crazy to me, because I think even in the 80s there was a thing like, I can't wear the same thing twice in 1 week. But now no one says that. No one wears the same thing twice in 1 week. If they wear the same thing twice in 1 month, people comment, oh, you're wearing the shirt again, because they notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to me. And so that's the cultural milieu that we're in.
Mm.
And so now we have an overabundance and excess in clothing, a waste of money. And our quality in clothing has gone down, where it's just trash now. It's just for how it might look for that day, that one time we wear it, but it's never for longevity. No one buys clothes for longevity, or I guess certain clothing you might, but it's just a weird thing how we've shifted in our lives, where excess is now the norm, is my point. Excess should never be the norm, but it has slowly become something like that.
So, I mean, we're talking about clothes. Short of throwing away our wardrobes, what would a godly person do? And the reason why I'm asking this is because I think the context that we're living in is also very different. I think northern New Jersey, New York City is very different from the rest of the country also. Where standards are a little different, they're a little higher, I think, than I want to see everywhere else in the world, because if we're higher than the rest of the United States, then that's higher than the world. I'm wondering, not only clothes, but also like other luxuries. And by luxury, I don't mean, because you gave a tractor example, but that man still needed a tractor to get the work done, right? It was an efficient need. I'm even talking about luxuries that we don't really need, that we just can afford and we just get anyway. Like, why would we, I don't know, need another set of golf clubs? Why did I get a new set of golf clubs a year ago, right? When I already had a set. And so even just questions like that, how do we maneuver through what luxuries we should be able to afford and keep and use versus not really doing that?
Yeah, I think I'll answer in 2 ways, but then I just want to say this is about our context.
Right.
People in Japan, if you're listening, it wouldn't make sense to them.
Right.
Because, they have a uniform that they have when they go to work.
Mhm.
If they're an office person, then, they salaryman, they would wear the white shirt and, slacks every day. And it doesn't matter if the colors are different.
Right.
No one cares, right? And if you're maybe living in Western Pennsylvania, you probably wouldn't relate to this as much.
Yeah.
But we are in North Bergen, New Jersey, just 10 minutes away from New York City. So that culture kind of has
For sure.
come to us
Mhm.
where, you have to dress something. Like you can't eat the same food twice. No one eats like the same food twice. And like very rarely do I see people, and if you don't live in this area and you're listening to this podcast, you might be shocked. But people in our area don't even eat leftovers as much. Leftovers is not a normal thing. It's like what, lower middle class people do, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a great thing, to be honest. Leftovers, hit me up. Save some money. Awesome.
I never have any because I finish.
Yeah. So people might not relate. But going to your question about excess and luxury, I think number one thing that we should always keep in mind is, are you content with what you have now? And I think contentment is a big issue that we face. It doesn't matter what life stage, or even if you couldn't relate to the examples before, this is relevant. Are you content? Are you content with the one pair of jeans that you have? Are you content with the 2 pairs of jeans that you have? Are you content with the 10 pairs of jeans that you have? Are you content? And if you're not content, then your heart will always look for more jeans. If you have 1, you want 2. If you have 2, you want 4. If you have 10, you want, another 2 every 2 months, whatever it is.
Right.
And so, that contentment is a huge thing that we need to check our hearts with. And I think that's something that we need to talk about with, when we consider what is excess, what is necessary and what is not necessary. Because when you're content, then you realize that anything additional you would thank the Lord for, but you wouldn't necessarily need. And then there's freedom. And, there's an illustration I like using. It's how you hold things. So you don't hold material goods with a white knuckle grip.
Yep.
You actually hold material goods with an open palm, facing up. And so if it goes away, it goes away. But it's not something that you hold like onto with like dear life. That's not what you do. And so if material goods are like that, then anything that's great, you thank the Lord for it. You're very grateful for receiving it.
Yeah.
And you want to use it for his glory. Those are awesome things. And then people in different areas will have different amounts of wealth in our society. Even in the United States, there's different average incomes depending on where you live. And so in New York City, the average income is different than someone that's living in, let's say, New Mexico.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah.
And so you can live on different incomes. But the point is, are you content? Do you have contentment in the Lord or do you not? And so I always want to go back to that. And if you're not content with what you have, then I think there's an issue with your heart, because aren't you still breathing? Aren't you still eating? Don't you still have clothes on your back? Don't you still have a roof over your head? Can't you thank the Lord for that? And so those are things that we should continue to thank the Lord for.
I think that's really helpful because what you're saying is it's not necessarily the object, that luxurious object that is the issue, but it's the heart that is the issue. And kind of like what you were saying, we can receive it in thankfulness and gratitude, but at the same time, are we content in the situation and the context that we are in right now?
Yeah, because you can want a certain good for its, superior quality.
Right.
Let's say you want to buy a car. You don't necessarily want to buy a lemon being like, I'm going to be content. You want to buy the best that you can afford that will give you the quality that you need. And if you're like, there are people who say, I want a commuter car. And because they drive into New York City from New Jersey, let's say.
Right.
You wouldn't necessarily want a luxury car for a commuter car.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. Why would you put on mileage and, depreciate that car that fast?
Yeah.
You probably want to change to a commuter car. And so a lot of people that I know who are very wealthy will still buy like a used Honda to drive to the city back and forth. And when they do, it's fine because it gets them to where they need to go.
Yep.
And if they live in or they work in a part of New York City that's not that safe, you probably wouldn't want to drive a luxury car.
Yeah.
And so I worked in a place, something like that. I worked in where Columbia University is.
Mhm.
and it's literally a street across. So there's a lot of gentrification in the area, literally across the street from low income housing.
Mhm.
And so when you would park along the street, you had to make sure that nothing was in your car. Nothing. Like even if it's like an empty box, you don't want to leave it in your car. Because almost every day, I would see, and this is like 10 plus years ago, because this is before I went into the pastoral route. Almost every day I would see broken glass
Yeah.
because someone would smash a window to take like a roll of quarters or something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't want to leave anything in your car. So why would you want to risk that? And so there are people who would have a commuter car for work, and that's totally fine. I think that's actually frugal and wise to do that. There are people who have a large family who will, instead of buying a SUV, they would buy a minivan.
Oh, I love minivans.
And there are some people who can't stand minivans because I don't know, they just don't like how it looks. I don't know. Dudes
Yeah.
love minivans though. 'Cause
Yeah.
you could drive a minivan whatever way you want.
Yeah,
And the
I
people
love
are
them.
like, I can't judge that dude. He drives a minivan.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think a lot of the dudes don't mind minivans. It's the ladies that mind minivans. I think there's a social stigma attached to minivans in this area, at least.
I love it.
I don't know. I love minivans. And when we go on trips, I suggest that we rent a minivan.
Yeah.
And they're awesome.
Yeah.
What was the last one we rented? It was like a hybrid, and it had like screens in the back of every seat.
Yeah.
That's
It was
luxury.
And we drove around for 3-4 days, and we used a quarter tank of gas. It was so
I'm
nice.
telling you, man, minivans are the way.
Anyway, but yeah. So when we look at that, we just have to make sure that our priorities are set in order. Is it for social status? Isn't that vanity? If it's vanity, then I do want to mention we had a guest speaker once, and I'm not going to mention the name, but we had a guest speaker once, and this gentleman, this reverend, he found out what our dress code was. And he put a jacket on, he had a tie on, but he had cargo pants on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I found that to be incredibly humbling. That, I'm positive if he had slacks, he would wear slacks. But, he came from, I would imagine, humble means. And the best clothes that he had, he put on, and he presented the word of God to us.
Yeah.
And I think I'll remember that picture for the rest of my life because it was so good. And so most people, when they come up on stage, they would dress with the best clothes that they have. And, I dress with a suit. And I put on, the best clothes that I could possibly wear. And this person's best clothes was that. And I found it incredibly humbling. And, to me personally, because this person's best was so beautiful. To me, I can only imagine how beautiful it was to God.
Mm.
And so with what he had, he probably had just a few pairs of pants, let alone even enough to put on like a different suit every Sunday. You know what I mean? Different jacket every Sunday. Because if I wear a jacket, let's say in our church, if I wear a jacket twice in 1 month, people notice. And it's like, oh, I've seen this jacket before. And so people notice. But, in the end, who cares?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was an awesome thing to experience. It was humbling for me to note. And I praise God for this brother. And I pray that God will continue to provide all his needs. He's the all-sustaining God. And I can tell he has riches beyond our imagination because what he has, he gives to the Lord.
Yeah.
It's so obvious. And so I'm very thankful for someone like him who can kind of remind us of what is important in our lives. And he doesn't drive a luxury car. He doesn't need to. And, he spends the money that he has feeding his family and kids, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because his wife is a stay-at-home mom, and he can only feed his kids with, let's say, some speaking engagements that he has. And the honorarium we gave him, he personally came to me and said, I thank the Lord for you, brother, because what you gave me, so our car had problems and we took it to the mechanic and it would cost this much and we couldn't afford it. But with what your church gave me, I was able to fix my car. And so every day he's relying on his daily bread for the Lord. I think that that's an incredible testament to the goodness of God.
Yeah.
And so pictures like that really remind me of how God really takes care of all his sheep
Yeah.
in such amazing and wonderful and even miraculous ways that we should find no reason for bitterness or resentment or malcontent, but we should give glory to God for with what we have. Even the t-shirt that you're wearing listening to this, or the shorts that you have, or the PJs that you have on, you should give glory to God for being able to wear that. And so that concern of excess becomes a point of even praise and worship. Any luxury that we have, anything that we would have in overabundance, you would glorify God for, just as David did in Psalm 23 when he said, "My cup overflows." It's a point of praise, not like, "Oh, I need more," that kind of thing.
I guess along the same vein, a question that came in was, are we allowed to ask God for quote unquote little things with the right heart, like help with needs?
What are little things?
I think this question is asking for even material things, because I think oftentimes Christians, and we just discussed this too, Christians are kind of encouraged to not just ask for the material things, but to, again, strive for godliness and good character. And I think what this question is asking is, can we ask for those little things? Can we ask for, next month's rent? Can we ask for groceries? Can we ask for just these quote unquote little things that don't seem like a big deal in the grand scope of things, but are important in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, if you want a certain thing, it's not necessarily bad. And like I said, it comes from the heart. And I think there's a reason perhaps why we're coming back to this subject of contentment over and over again. I think this is something that our church is going to have to face. And maybe, I should do like a deeper teaching on it. But let me just give you a quick example that happened in my life. I told this story before, I think many years ago, but when I went to seminary, like I said, it was in Columbia University campus.
Yeah.
And so in that campus, like across the street was a Five Guys. So before my evening class, I wanted to get a quick dinner. So I went to Five Guys. They have superior burgers, in my opinion. And so I stopped by a Five Guys, and right outside the Five Guys was a homeless man. And so, or unhoused.
I mean, that's what they're called now.
I think that term is so funny. Anyway, there was a homeless man, and he asked me for money. And I think he was in the Five Guys, actually. Yeah, he was in the Five Guys. He asked me, do you have any money? I would like to get a burger, or I would like to get some food. And he specifically said he would like McDonald's. And so I was like, actually, I was a big fan of Five Guys back then. So I didn't see anything wrong with me saying this. I was like, you know what? I could buy you a Five Guys burger here since I'm online. He's like, no, actually, I want McDonald's. And I said, okay, that's not a big deal. He had one of those like foldable carts.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had his belongings in there. He was in the Five Guys. And he was able to articulate what he wanted. He's like, no, I want McDonald's. It was like very firm.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, that's totally fine. You could definitely have McDonald's if you want. So I reached in my wallet and I gave him a 20. And he was surprised that I actually gave him money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know why when you're asking for something. So I gave him a 20 and he goes, what's your name? And I thought that was such a weird ask.
Yeah.
And so here we are in the middle of dinner time. The Five Guys had a bunch of people there eating, and he's very loud. He's like, what's your name? And I said, oh, my name is Eugene Kim. And then he goes, okay. And then he stops after receiving the 20, and he starts to pray out loud. And he goes, Lord, bless Kim. So,
Yeah.
He said, bless Kim. And he gave this like long, elaborate prayer for me. And then he went out, and I presume he went to get McDonald's or whatever it was. I remember that. that kind of scene stuck in my head. And like I said, when you live in New York City all your life, like I have, then you're bound to come across panhandlers,
Mm-hmm.
and how you deal with them shows me that you're a New Yorker or someone that's out of town or an immigrant. But this is how I grew up, and so I didn't think I was doing anything special. But what stood out was his prayer, and I remember writing it down and putting it in my journal, because it was pretty particular and it was pretty special. It wasn't just general. He was praying for God's providence over my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was very interesting. And I would imagine then that having that preference to eat McDonald's instead of Five Guys is not necessarily a bad thing. He's like, no, I really would like McDonald's.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have a craving. Why is that a bad thing?
Right.
I don't think it's a bad thing. And if I said, there's no McDonald's here, you get Five Guys or you get nothing,
Yeah.
I could have said that. I don't know why I would, though. If your kid wants apples instead of oranges and you have apples on hand, why is that a bad thing that you give him apples?
Yeah.
But if there are no apples and you're like, actually, I'm sorry that we don't have apples right now, but we do have oranges. Can you be content with that? That could also be a learning experience.
Yeah.
But we're also automatically thinking that we should assume that kids don't have preferences, or we should always cater to the preferences. I think those are two extremes that I don't like to go to. So if someone has a craving, you do it all the time. Why can't someone else do it? When you drive down the street, you're like, man, I'm really in the mood for Wendy's because my basketball team won.
Yeah.
It's okay to get Wendy's, but if someone goes, no, you have to get Burger King, you're going to be like, what? How's that relevant?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not relevant. And so I know I made this into a longer point, but I don't think it's wrong to have a preference. I think it really comes down again to the heart. If the preference isn't available and you just absolutely have to have it, then the heart's wrong. Then you have to deal with it. And if you are forcing your preference down on someone else, then you also know that's wrong, because that's almost you're acting in a totalitarianistic way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying my preferences trump whatever you might even remotely desire. So you eat what I feed you, because that kind of thing.
Right.
That's not necessarily the good way either. And so that's something that I think we should stay away from. We should stay away from the extremes. And, when we, somewhat cater to someone's preferences, why is that a bad thing? You know? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to desire burgers on Memorial Day. But if burgers ran out, or burgers became like $20 a pound for ground beef, and you're like, let's go for a cheaper option. Let's eat steak. And you're not going to complain, right?
Right.
I think complaining, it's like, oh, I know the steak's good, but man, this burger I couldn't have. Now the steak. And you have this malcontent kind of growing inside you. Those are extremes that we're talking about. And so it's not wrong to pray for little things if you're talking about preferences. If you're talking about daily bread, then no, that's not a little thing, in my opinion. I think little things in the context that this person might be asking might be preferences, like McDonald's over Wendy's or something like that. But if it's little things like, I need food, that's not a little thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I would think daily bread is something that we might consider not a huge thing, considering, let's say, money-wise. It's not like a huge project that you have to undertake. But we're commanded to pray for the little things in that sense. You're commanded to pray for the daily bread that God would provide.
Yeah. And I think also, just in context, this question could be saying little things in comparison to, like, I don't know, praying for the country, let's say, which would be considered a big thing, or praying for, I don't know, the church, which would be a grand thing. And so I think little thing in comparison to those things is what this individual may have been referencing to.
Yeah, I enjoy that we are able to pray for the little things then in that sense, and that our God in heaven would listen to them and answer them.
I specifically remember, and this was not a little thing to me, but I guess it could be considered a little thing. When Angela and I had Adeline, I think it was within the first month, Pastor Eugene, you came over with your wife and Elizabeth. And I remember your wife prayed that we would, during the meal prayer, that we would be able to sleep through the night. And I still remember that because I was like, wow, that's actually exactly what I needed. And sure, it's not praying for the church, it's not praying for the country, but at that time, sleeping through the night was literally the number one thing that I wanted and needed at that point. And so I remember being really thankful for that prayer. And that really, I'll remember that, I think, for a while. But yes, you are able to pray for little things because God hears all things, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, wouldn't you as a parent enjoy and relish the times that you can provide the little things for your kid too?
Oh, yeah.
So our Heavenly Father teaches us about his character through even, the natural way things go. And Jesus says it himself, like, which one of you, if your son asks for a fish, would give him a snake or something like that, bread, and give him a stone?
Yeah.
You love giving the little things to your kid because that really is something that pleases the Father to do.
I wanted to ask one more question, one more fun question. This is an interesting one. What is the Protestant view of circumcision? Very interesting.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What is the biblical view on circumcision? Because we don't need to get circumcised to.
I think that's what the question is asking. Yeah, like, do Christian boys need to get circumcised?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Circumcision is now purely aesthetic, I believe, and people thought there were health benefits, and then there's like dissenting views on its health benefits. Some people say it's neutral. Some people say it's not healthy. Some people say it is healthy. But, now it has nothing to do with the covenant because that was the old covenant. The new covenant is the sign of the new covenant is baptism, not circumcision. Right. So circumcision is a sign of the old covenant. And in Galatians, Paul is extremely upset with people who are still saying that even with the new covenant, you still need circumcision. So circumcision is maybe a remnant of the old covenant that we can look at when we look at circumcision. We can look at what it signified because it has to do with cuts,
Right.
And there's a lot of cutting in the covenant. There's a separation of carcasses. There's a separation of God's people and not God's people. There's a separation of land. There's a separation of those that would be his enemies versus his people. Like I think I said that, but those things were all things that people would have been reminded of when they were circumcised to separate themselves from the uncircumcised. And David even uses it as like, a derogative term toward someone else when he goes, these uncircumcised Philistines, right?
Right.
And so these are things where we see was a remnant of the old covenant, but the new covenant sign is baptism. And so it's not circumcision anymore. So if you decide to have your kids circumcised or not circumcised, I think there's freedom in it. But I think it has nothing to do with the covenant.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, because, in the Old Testament, like you said, David, talking about the Philistines would say, you uncircumcised Philistine. Whereas in the New Testament, Paul, when he doesn't really like the quote unquote circumcision party, it almost seems like a negative thing. But you're saying that because as it pertained to the covenant, the old covenant, the new covenant has its new signs and seals. And therefore the circumcision is a neutral thing for us. You don't have to, you can, you don't have to. It's a neutral thing.
Yeah, I always say that is a good case of adiaphora, where it's neither good nor bad in itself. But if you do circumcise for, let's say, some covenant purposes, saying that I am more holy now that I'm circumcised, that is an evil that Paul talks about. Or if you don't circumcise because, you're saying that circumcised people are just evil, I don't know, whatever it is. The point is, it's adiaphora.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. And
I have a fun one.
Okay. I don't think this will be fun for me.
I have a fun one too, actually.
No, you don't. You had your chance.
Who do you think will win the 7-game series between the Heat and the Celtics?
Why do you think it's a 7-game series?
I think it will be.
Yeah, it might be a 6-game series.
No, I think it will be. It'll be the Celtics.
You think the Celtics are going to take it?
To be honest, by the time this comes out on Monday, I may be in Boston right now. Because if it's game 7, I might go. I really might go.
It's Memorial Day.
I know.
You're gonna sit in traffic for 7 hours.
I might go. Wait, what was your fun question, Pastor Eugene?
There's this basketball team in the Boston that's really playing poorly,
No, they're playing well right now.
to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, they played poorly the first 3 games.
Yep.
Yeah, why do you think they played so poorly?
I don't want to get emotional and heated. Yeah, I have many thoughts, but this is not a fun question. This is a stressful question. Pastor Eugene, for next week, I'm thinking about going over some heresies, which I think might be interesting. So, for example, going over Jehovah's Witnesses, and what's that group based out in Utah? Mormons. Yeah, just kind of going
They're different,
over.
by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, just going over those kind of maybe to today's cults. I thought might be interesting. But we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we discuss some cultish behavior. Tune in next week to find out. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith. Peace.